Welcome to MegaBucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real-world ideas that can put MegaBucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hershberger.
Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Nina Hershberger. And with me today, I have Graves Burke. If you have been with me for a while, you might remember Graves has been on my podcast in the past. In fact, we did a 3-series podcast on how to monetize Facebook. But we're going to turn the corner on today's show. I have a lot of clients right now who are saying we can't find good employees. We don't know how to find them. We don't know how to hire them. We need help. And Graves reached out to me, and he's got a lot of background. SEO, his first business that he had was an SEO digital marketing agencies for lawyers. And then he got into SEO and pay-per-click and for e-commerce. And he's kind of taken a twist that we're not going to necessarily get into today. But let me just say, he's got a lot of experience hiring people. And we're recording this in June 2021. So whether or not you think we're still in the middle of COVID or whether we're kind of at the tail end of COVID and, things are opening back up, you might say, yeah, but it's different now. And so we're going to get into that as well. So anyway, Graves, welcome to today's show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nina. It's such a treat to get to chat with you about all this stuff. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is fun. We were talking just before we even started the recording that, it all depends on your outlook. It might take a little more creativity these days, which you are in spades. So let's get right into it. Tell me, what is your secret to finding and hiring good people?
My secret to finding and hiring good people, really, there's a lot of small elements to it, but overarching, there's 3 really big things. There's one question you absolutely have to ask during the interview process that will make or break your business when it comes to bringing employees into your business. And we'll cover what that question is. The second thing is kind of coming about it counterintuitively. So maybe not doing things the way that you experienced being the employee getting hired as you were growing up before you ventured into your entrepreneurial role. So being counterintuitive. And then the last is having a systemized hiring process that you can run for multiple openings in your business as your business grows and kind of plods along.
Well, one thing I always say to people, too, long gone are the days where you're going to have an employee that lasts for 30 or 40 years. So you probably should always be in the possible hiring mode. Would you say that's true as well?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, this generation and my generation, I'm 41 at the time of this recording. It's not the same as with my parents where they worked the same job for decades. And so it's very much people, especially millennials and me, the Zennial, and then Gen Z, they really, because they're having kids later, and they're buying homes later and all of that, it's not as much about the financial side of things as we get older, we tend to get more conservative and we definitely want really good pay and stuff like that. They really want company culture and they want a fun, good place to work. And part of that also has to do with they want to be able to learn and grow in the role. And so it's very different than how it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, for sure.
Well, when you say learn and grow, I remember, and you're right, back in my early days, I was an employee as well, and I would say there was one particular woman that I worked for that was absolutely brilliant. She was the best manager I have ever experienced in my entire working career. And I said, I don't care if she asked me to take out the trash. I will learn something because I'll know where the trash goes. So that learning and growing, is there an initiative that is required, or do they just sit back and say, well, you got to teach me?
That's a really good question. I think for the right person, they will come into the business with that initiative. For another person, then they might be a good fit for your business in a certain type of role. Not everybody wants to learn and grow. Some people just want consistency, and they don't want big swings of stress added to their life from day to day. They want to come in, clock in, do their work, have their head down, right? And they'll be a good worker in that, but they don't necessarily want to grow. And so one of the things I consistently do, especially in my SEO agencies, was as there were things that I needed, I would just ask my employees, or even sometimes freelancers, is there anything that you're interested in? Is there anything that you're wanting to study? And I'd go buy the programs, right? There's a ton of content out there. I'd go buy really good programs and let my employees go through those programs. Not all of them would then use that work, because I never wanted to pigeonhole somebody into a position they didn't want. That kills company culture so fast, where people start doing work just because they know how to do it. I'd let them try it out. And there was always one person that enjoyed it more than everybody else. That was the person that I let step into that role more.
Did you do that because did you have a lot more meetings, staff meetings, or how did you know that they, wanted to or liked to, or did it take a lot of your time?
It did take time, but that was one thing. So there's this idea that people, in entrepreneurs especially, I can do it better and faster than my employee, right? And so I really had to fight myself against that, because there was a lot of stuff I could do better and faster than my employees when they first started. But as I started letting go of that stuff, because truth be told, I was nearing burnout, right? And I was probably in burnout for a lot of these things that I was doing. Every new hire cannot do it nearly as well as you can when they first start. But you give them 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, and they'll be doing it 80% as well as you, with way more energy and excitement than you are. So they actually end up doing it better than you. And so that time and energy that gets freed up allowed me to step into more of a leadership role, where I was able to check in with my employees and say, hey, what is it that you're interested in? So because we were doing SEO, a big part of what we were doing was blogging, right? And then Google Maps was starting to come up. And so I would ask if any of them had any interest in that. And they didn't necessarily have interest in that. But then press releases were a really big thing. And one of the press release courses I bought was by a guy named Mark Hardy. And it was a phenomenal course. And so I asked, hey, are you interested in learning about press releases? And so these were writers primarily doing blogging for my clients' websites. And 3 or 4 of them said, yeah, I'm interested in press releases. So I let them go through the course, made sure it was okay with Mark first. And then one of them really liked doing press releases. And I said, would you like to do the press releases for my clients? So I was expanding my offering for my SEO clients into other things. They weren't really excited about Google Maps, not a big deal. I found somebody that was more interested in that. They stayed blogging. One blogger loved doing the press releases, and he did them really well. And so I allowed him to step into that role 50% of the time and blogging 50% of the time. And I just did that as I added PPC, as I added Facebook and social media management, as I added Google AdWords ads. I would learn how to do it first, and then I would roll other people into replacing me out of it.
Okay, so we kind of flipped, because what we've been talking about for the last few minutes is actually how to keep employees interested, engaged, and excited to be working in your company, because you're letting them go where they want to go, what they get excited about, training if that's something they like, and doing those kind of things. So let's flip back to the how we're going to get them side. You talked about three things, so let's start on those.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing me back. Absolutely. That was more about company culture and growing, but we got to find these people. And that's what, there's a lot of employers out there right now that are having problems finding really good staff. And the common conversation in the marketplace that I see right now is there's a lot of people that are making more money being on unemployment, and there may or may not be truth to that because there's a lot of people whose unemployment has run out and they're having to find jobs. And there's other people where their unemployment program's still running. So the first misconception, and I didn't mention this, but it's a misconception, is that the only thing people want is more money than the next guy. And that's a common mistake. I want to come back to that, but I just don't want to leave that off the table because it's such a common misconception before COVID and during COVID and after COVID. First, I want to cover the number one question you have to ask in your interview process that will make or break your business. When I was doing, so after I ran those SEO agencies, it was about a decade, 4 or 5 years on the first one, 4 or 5 years on the second one. So it was almost a decade. I went into consulting, and in consulting, I was talking with a lot of business owners, and I can't tell you how many business owners had hired staff. Their staff came on, worked for about 12 to 18 months, a year to a year and a half, and then took their client list and half of their employees and opened up shop down the street competing with them. That happened time after time after time, and I saw it even when I was an employee. And this one question will stop that dead in its tracks before you ever bring somebody into your business, which will save your business. Because these businesses, when they were coming to me, were on their last legs. They were like, I don't know what to do, because they were creating their own competition, right? And so the one thing, and it's super counterintuitive, the one thing we have to make sure that we do is we ask a very, very specific question. And that question is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And the reason we want to ask that question, there's another question we can ask as well, but that one is a big, big, big one, is because when we're the small business owner hiring for an employee for our business, we tend to like the people that are like us, but we're entrepreneurs, right? And because we're entrepreneurs, we tend to gravitate toward people that are entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs are not very good employees. I think we can all admit, if we look in the mirror, we don't always make the best employee, right? And so that's where entrepreneurs make the mistake. They bring on other entrepreneurs into their business because they like them. They go, they're just like me. They're self-starters. They're go-getters. They want to learn. They're driven. The problem is an entrepreneur doesn't want to be an employee in a business. They want to have their own thing. They want to be the person, the captain at the helm guiding the ship. And that's very dangerous to bring that type of person on as an employee. And there are certain elements and times you can do that, but you got to be really careful because they can take your employee list and your client list and open up shop down the street and compete with you. So where do you see yourself in 5 years reveals to you as the hiring person, this person doesn't want to be an employee. They want to be a business owner. They want to be their own person.
So are you saying that people would answer that question if they were an entrepreneur and say, well, in 5 years, I really want to own my own business. Will they say that?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times they will. And if they don't say that, if they say the right answer, which is, well, I want to be with your company and I want to grow through the ranks and work my way up, then there's that other question that I mentioned, which is like a backup question, which you can ask. And it's kind of a two-parter. One, you might just poke them a little bit with a stick and say, so you're telling me you don't want to do your own thing? That's totally a fine follow-up question to ask and see, no, I really love being, I love being in a team. This is how a good employee would say. I love being in a team and working with others, and I don't want to do my own thing. The other is, well, tell me a little bit about your past. Have you ever done your own thing before? Because you're the employer hiring, some people will think you want to hear that they've done their own thing before. And so if they've done their own thing before, that's a possible red flag. It might be an orange flag, but it can be a red flag where they're an entrepreneur. I've done my own thing. Oh, tell me more about that. What did you do? Why didn't it work? Right? They'll reveal to you if they're entrepreneurial or more of an employee. So that one question will change 80% of the business owners listening to this, just not hiring entrepreneurs. And again, it doesn't mean hiring entrepreneurs is bad. They can be really good. Sometimes there's a time to do that, but not for somebody that you want to bring into your business and work up the ranks and have stay for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and grow with you. Because that's not an entrepreneur, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would say hire that person on a project basis or as a freelancer or something, because they could very well have some good skills. But you're right. You don't want them. And in fact, I'm raising my hand because that very thing happened to me. I hired an entrepreneur, and sure enough, a year and a half later, he goes rogue on me and trying to take my client base. And they call and say, well, do you know what he's doing? So anyway, okay. All right. Makes sense. That makes sense. So let's go on to step number 2.
So step number 2 is I really want to cover some common mistakes just to avoid more of these pitfalls. That's the absolute biggest pitfall. But there's other big pitfalls, and it's common mistakes people make when hiring employees. So there's a couple of these that I've written out, and we'll go through these real quick. A lot of people find themselves in a pinch. And so maybe somebody left, and this happens more in service-based businesses than it does coaching-type businesses. But I saw this a lot with contractors and day spas and stuff like that, where they were offering a service and they had customers on the books, and then an employee quits, and now they're in a pinch. And they would so the mistake is hiring fast and firing slow. And so what would often happen is they would hire somebody because they needed somebody this weekend or next week, and they would bring somebody in that just wasn't going to be a good culture fit. But then they would be really slow to replacing that person. And that goes back to your question of, should business owners just always be kind of looking for good talent? I think so, because that allows you to hire slow and fire fast, right? And that was one of those lessons I learned from my first mentor, who was the president of an ice cream place called Cold Stone. And they grew exponentially under his management to where they were opening basically, it wasn't exactly this, but they were basically open one store every day for a year. 365 stores in a year is tremendous growth. And so he really helped me with a couple of things. And the first one was hire slow, fire fast. But if you're in a pinch, it is okay to hire fast, but fire faster, right? And that repeatable process that I have that we'll get to the third step, I'll walk you through some of that, that allows you to hire slow and fire faster, hire fast and fire faster, right? Because it really is true that one bad apple can spoil the bunch. If you already have employees and you bring somebody on that's not a good fit, I'm using air quotes. I don't like really saying people are bad people, but with a rotten apple and a bunch of fresh, ripe apples releases a gas that causes ripe apples to ripen even faster and then go rotten. So it's a real thing. So hire slow, fire fast is one thing you want to do, and having a system and a process for that can help that. The other common mistake is hiring for the person's experience. So somebody will say, well, I want somebody that can do video. And they'll say, well, I want somebody with 5 years of video editing experience and Adobe After Effects and that sort of a thing. Just because somebody is really experienced doesn't mean they're a good culture fit. And so this was the second thing my mentor taught me that really changed my hiring process. And it was hire the smile and train the rest. Unless you're hiring a lawyer, doctor, or engineer, right, where they need to have a really, really good skill set, for me, hiring the smile, hiring that really good culture fit made the difference because I could then train them how to do things the way that I needed and wanted them done. A lot of times when you hire somebody for their experience only, you'll get a really grumpy person. And they're not, that's why they're for hire sometimes. And so I found bringing on really good people that would show up to work with a smile every day was way more valuable than hiring somebody just because they knew how to use Adobe or After Effects or whatever, you know.
So it's kind of like attitude. Hiring, I mean, you're saying hire for smile, but it's kind of like hiring for attitude.
Yes. Yeah, I love the way you put that. Absolutely. You want to hire a person with a really good attitude. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I love the way you put that. Another mistake is, and I see this in the job postings a lot when people come to me and want help hiring, they're entrepreneurs and they're so burned out because they've been doing everything that one of the things they commonly say in their job is, I want a self-starter. And it's like, when you ask for that, you're saying, I want an entrepreneur. Now employees that know what they're supposed to be doing will show up and start on their own, right? But saying that they have to be a self-starter and a self-manager and all this stuff, that's not how employees work, right? They want somebody to give them that consistency where they don't have to guess what they're doing every day. And so you do have to tell them what to do at the beginning. So that self-starter is another red flag that you might accidentally get an entrepreneur, and they're probably going to leave in 12 to 18 months and compete with you. So I don't usually say that I need somebody as a self-starter. I'd rather have somebody that's a team player, way more than a self-starter. But I also, there's a way to handle employer interactions that will take an employee and turn them more into a self-starter without turning them into an entrepreneur. And that's how to handle problem solving. And we'll get to that in a second. Because that kind of comes in with the training stuff. Another misconception is I see these job postings and the entrepreneurs are in burnout. They're trying to find a replacement for themselves. And so they list way too broad of tasks for this one person. So let's say I'm trying to hire an executive assistant, or I'm trying to hire an admin that'll help me. And then they say, I want you to manage Facebook, and I want you to run my Google ads, and I want you to manage Instagram, and I want you to do video for YouTube. And it's just a really broad set of tasks that is really hard to fulfill with one person. That should be 3 or 4 different people for most businesses. Another common one is, I want somebody to be a web designer for, maybe you're an agency or something, right? And they want a web designer, but they also want a graphic designer. And those are 2 very different things, because web design and web development is more code, whereas graphic design is the visual layout of things. Having hired for positions like that, it's really hard to find one person that's in both of those roles. And that's a huge common problem that won't get you a good company culture, is trying to find one person to do it all. Because what happens is the person will raise their hand and say, I can do that, or I want to learn how to do that. But they don't love all of those things. They don't love YouTube the same way they love Instagram or Facebook, or they don't love ads the same way they love social media or blogging or whatever. Or they don't love working with client facing as much as they do prospect facing, or vice versa, right? They love working with clients, but they don't want to have to do sales and prospecting. And so they end up becoming disgruntled because they don't like the position they're in. And that's why I would slowly roll people in. And I would only hire for very specific tasks. You know, one would be a blogger, another would be a graphic designer, another would be a web dev. And that really kept the company culture high, because I was only hiring for people that really loved doing what they were doing. So try not to use your new hires or your employees as stopgaps to fill roles. It doesn't go over very well long term. It might work for a week or 2, but it really doesn't build good company culture. And then there's another one, which is, let's come back to that money one, right? People only want the most amount of money, and that's why they're not applying for jobs, is because they're making too much on unemployment. it really isn't true for everybody. And sure, a lot of my experience is from before COVID, but I've helped a couple of different colleagues hire for two to four positions each, and during COVID and right now, and we're finding all of this stuff to be true, is people don't want to be at home doing nothing because they don't feel very useful in that. They really would rather do something they enjoy. But the problem is that they still do need some pay, but people would rather have, especially younger people, would rather have good culture fit with slightly less pay where they can work their way up than just the most amount of pay. So you've got to be like a buddy of mine who used to put on, he was an employee, he did IT, and he would put on with his boss IT consulting, continuing education programs, and they would do those all over the West Coast. That business went under before COVID, about half a year before COVID ever happened. And then COVID hit, and then he struggled trying to find a job. He just took a job doing AutoCAD. And to my knowledge, he's never done AutoCAD, but he's doing AutoCAD in the construction space. And he loves it because he's feeling useful. So don't underestimate the fact that people want to feel useful in a role, even though maybe you don't pay quite as much as they could make elsewhere. But give them a chance to grow and expand with you. So it's not always
and
about
also that they could be bored with what they were doing in the past. So if he's never done AutoCAD, now it's a new challenge. It's a new interest, new learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for seeing that, because that's exactly what's going on for him. You know, he's burned out on IT stuff because he did that for years. And so this opportunity to do something fun and learn something new, because he still likes computers and working on computers, you know, and I grew up doing engineering. So for me, AutoCAD sounds terrible. I did that for years. But yeah, absolutely. He's loving it because it's a new challenge for him.
And it also, it enhances his resume. So instead of just, you know, being a one dog pony, he now has some different skills. So I can see that. I can see it be interesting.
Yep. And he doesn't want to be a business owner. He wants to be an employee. He wants to wake up every morning, have somebody tell him this is what we're working on, go do it. He can go do it for 8 hours a day and be done at the end of the day and feel useful and feel valued and feel important and have product that he did that day or that week. Yeah, people love to feel that way and feel important and get their needs met that way for sure. So those are a lot of common mistakes and just misconceptions that we have as entrepreneurs trying to find employees. The last thing, which is step number 3, is having a repeatable process. And that is so important because, like you said, they should kind of always have rolling positions or at least be building, you know, a database of people that could make good employees. It's also a really good press release to put out is that we're growing our team. That's always a really good thing to say in the community because you can have people reaching out even if you're not necessarily trying to hire for that week, but having people apply for positions can be really good. And so having a repeatable process that works, whether you have a rolling hiring process or if you have an immediate need, is really important. And so my process, I wish it was 3 steps, but it's not, it's 4 steps, unfortunately. Because I like things in 3s, and I tried to make it 3 steps, and I just couldn't figure out how to get you everything your listeners need. So the first thing that we need for this is we need a job application. And for a lot of you'll be surprised, I've used in Monster and Guru and Freelancer and Upwork, and now it's Odesk vice versa. It's now Upwork, and it used to be Odesk and People Per Hour, and there was forums like Digital Point was a forum. I would hire people. I've used all of them, And my favorite is Craigslist, as crazy as that sounds.
Really?
Yep.
Are you kidding? No. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, who sits around Craigslist? But that's interesting. Tell me more.
So the reason why I liked Craigslist so much is because I could run my repeatable process, which required people to email me. And so one of my colleagues during COVID had a Monster account, and we tried Monster, but Monster would block us because they didn't want you having people emailing you off of Monster. They wanted it kept on Monster, which makes sense. But that killed my automated process, or semi-automated process. It's not entirely automated. And so we tried Craigslist as well. We also tried Barefoot Student or Barefoot, I can't remember what it was called, but it was to try to find college students that wanted some work as well. Because the colleague of mine is a clinical psychologist, and they needed a research assistant. And so we needed somebody with an interest in, now this was a paid position, no continuing education units or anything like that, no college credits. So it wasn't an internship, it was just straight paid, but we needed somebody with really high skill level. We ended up using Craigslist because we can say, hey, go ahead and email me at this email. So the first thing you need is a job listing that attracts the right people. And again, for me, culture is so, so important. Culture is so important that Zappos, the CEO of Zappos, rest in peace, I think he's passed away, Tony, I can never pronounce his last name. They created this process where they would run employees through their 4-week training, pay them for the 4 weeks, and then at the end offer them $2,000 to leave the company. And if the person left the company, the stipulation was you can never apply for another Zappos position again. And they wanted people that didn't just want money. They wanted people that wanted to be there, to be part of the team. And I thought that was so brilliant. And so for me, my job listing is fun, right? I will say things in the job listing as requirements, like telling good knock-knock jokes or the ability to make left-hand paper airplanes, right? I'll pepper in these little fun things that to me make me smile because I want employees that want to have a good time. They don't really need to know those things and they're not going to use them, but it gets them enjoying the hiring process. And so company culture starts at the job application. And I can't tell you how many times I see mistakes in just the job listing itself, where you read it and it just sounds flat and dull and it sounds boring and painful, right? So as people would come to me trying to hire, when I did consulting in the dog trainer space for 2 to 3 years, I had people that wanted to hire receptionists or dog walkers, because not necessarily a dog trainer, but somebody that would come in and help with the dogs, not play with the dogs, but help with the dogs. Oh my gosh, the listings. We would post the listings on Craigslist because they had another coach they were working with, and the coach said, here, run this. And I go, ooh, I don't think this is going to get very good results. I don't think it's going to get the results you think it's going to get. We'd run it. We might get 2 or 3 applicants. I would say make these changes and run it, but put it by your coach first because I didn't want to burn any bridges, right? So the coach said, yeah, go ahead and run it. Let's see how it does. We got 20 applicants just by changing the copy in the job listing, making it more fun, making it sound exciting and part of the team and not so dry and flat. So the listing is step number 1. The second is you need an email. And I just signed up for a free Gmail account, right? And I have people email that. So for a company, I might make it company name HR department at gmail.com or company new hires at gmail.com, right? Sometimes we want to go blind. We don't want to reveal the name of the company. So I might say super secret HR department, and so the email address doesn't give away the company name. I've had to do that because we were hiring actors and we didn't want them to know entirely what the role was for the acting position. We didn't want them to be able to research it, so we went blind. And we still got 40 to 50 applicants for that. And then with Gmail, there's canned responses which allows you to have things be semi-automated, and there's filters. And so you can actually, step one of the email process after the job listing is you say, email me these 2 or 3 things. Use this subject line and use this in the body, right? So I used to say, email me this subject line, and the subject line would be LMA Rocks, because my company was, those were the initials of my company at the time, LMA, right? So I'd say, use this subject line, LMA Rocks, and then give me the handle of your Skype, or give me the link of your Facebook. I didn't need it. I just wanted the email. I wanted to filter for facebook.com or the word Skype. I just needed to know if they could follow simple directions. If they can't do that, which there's a ton of people that can't, I would never see those applicants. They would go right into the email trash folder, right? And that sounds really harsh, and I feel bad saying it, but if somebody can't follow good directions, oh my gosh, it's just going to frustrate everybody else. So they would apply, they would do something super simple, and then I would use canned responses in Gmail, and I would send the next thing. It would automatically go out if they followed both directions, the subject line and in the body copy, their Facebook link or their LinkedIn link or their Skype handle or whatever, right? And I would never see any of that. So we'd get 100 people respond, 40 of them would go into trash, the other 60 would automatically get the step 2 email to them. And then of the 60, maybe only 20 were able to follow those directions. And step 2, I suggest you give them a task, whether it has to do with the position or not, where they can possibly fail. Because I just want them to risk it. So what we did is we would send them a puzzle. They would get a puzzle in the email, and it said, solve this puzzle. Don't worry if you don't solve it correctly, you're not out. Because I wanted people to either go to Google and search showing initiative, but not in an entrepreneurial way, right? But showing initiative. I wanted them to at least try. I said, don't worry, just try it. Because if you can't solve it, that's okay. Or I wanted them to try it and solve it correctly, because now I can come back and say, congratulations, you totally did that. You totally solved it, right? And so it was something so counterintuitive. But now my applicants, when they would get to the step 3, which was, I'll talk about that in a second, they're saying, and the interview, they're saying, oh my gosh, this is the most fun I've ever had applying for a job. And so they're, again, getting to feel what the company culture is going to be like, right? And so it's just a little graphic puzzle that we would send them and have them solve. Step 3 is the most important part. If they attempted the puzzle, I didn't care if they got it right or wrong. If they attempted the puzzle and sent me their process, I would then invite them to step 3, which was a Google form that would ask questions. And here's the deal, Nina, you and I talked about before the call. One of the things is it's really hard as an entrepreneur when you're so busy running your business to look at a resume and say, is this a good candidate with a bad resume? Or is this a bad candidate with a really good resume? Because a lot of times all it tells you is that they're good at doing resumes. And so I said, I want to get rid of the resumes. I don't want to have to look at resumes because they're all different. None of them, they're not uniforms. And it's really hard to grade based on a resume. So I created a Google form with anywhere from, depending on the hiring position, anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 questions. And that puts all of their answers in one spreadsheet in Google Sheets. And now I just insert a column in between every question, and I can grade everybody the same because all of their answers are side by side. And then what you can do is once you've graded everybody, then because it's a spreadsheet, you just filter the top, the best to the top, whoever scored the most, because I grade on a scale of 1 to 5, and then I tally them all at the end. Oh my gosh, it made it so much easier to pick the absolute best candidates because all their answers were side by side. Because with one person, you can look at it, go through everything on a resume, and then 10 people later, you forget if that person was a good person or not. So this made it so much easier. And then I would just invite the top 7 people to an interview on Skype. And that's the last step, is the interview. And with the interview, I just want to see, do they show up presentable, even though it's Skype? Do they show up on time? Oh, by the way, presentable. One time an applicant had their laptop on a coffee table and they were sitting on their couch in shorts. And the camera, so needless to say, it was a painful interview for me. Here I'm looking up this guy's shorts. It was terrible. But do they show up presentable? Do they show up on time? Because you'd be surprised how many people don't show up on time on something where they're not having to drive or park or anything. And so that was how, especially during COVID, we were just doing them over Skype or Zoom. And so they can turn on their camera and get a feel for you and them and stuff. Now, if you do interviews in person, that's totally fine. I've got 3 really cool tests for you. 2 of them I learned from my first mentor. If you're going to do in-person interviews, if you're going to do it, sometimes on employee or business owners will do what's called a group interview. So they'll bring 5 or 6 or 7 people in all at once. So my first mentor was the president of Cold Stone, and he said what we would do is we would do group interviews in the store. The store would be closed, and we would have everybody get in a circle and they would do a dance off. And I said, oh my God, that would scare me, because I'm 6'4" and lanky, and I don't feel good dancing. I would be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I'd hate to have to get out there and dance, but I'd give it a try. And he said, it's counterintuitive. We're not looking for the person that gets out in the circle the first, the fastest, the most energetic, that can dance the best. We don't care about that. I don't want to throw you under the bus, so I'll give you the answer. What we're looking for is the people on the outside of the circle that are encouraging the other people that are shy to give it a try. The people that will grab them by the hand and bring them into the circle with them and be a team with them. The people that are cheering or the people that are not cheering. That's what they wanted. So it was so counter. It had nothing to do with serving ice cream. It had everything to do with being a good teammate. They were looking at the outside of the circle, not the person dancing. And I just thought that was brilliant. I didn't have to use that for my SEO businesses, but it's such a good way if you do group interviews. The second one, and this one I used with the SEO agency for law firms, because we had a lobby. You have them wait in the lobby and you tell the secretary, I just want you to watch this person covertly. And then so the person would wait in the lobby, and the secretary would in the opening of the business, whatever you want to call that. The secretary would watch him and say, just have a seat. He'll be right with you in a couple minutes. And then I would send other employees of mine to walk past them in and out of the front of the business in the lobby and stuff. I'd say, hey, go grab me a bottle of water, say hi to this person. And what I wanted the secretary to look for was, did the person raise their head and smile at the people that are walking past them, or were they just buried in their cell phone all the time, right? When the employee said hi, did they say hi back? Did they try to say hi to the employee first, right? And were they generally friendly? And so that can show you how this person is company culture-wise with strangers that they don't even know. And it was such a good way to get a feel for the people. And then I just have the secretary take little notes for me, like little check marks. Did they smile? Did they say hi? Were they buried in their phone? Yes, no. That's all the secretary had to do. And then she would hand that to me. She'd say, you got a message, right? As I was in the interview, and she'd hand me that. And I'd take it while I was interviewing the person. That's a really, really good way to get a feel. That's a test. And then the last test, which I already gave you, but I want to remind you, your listeners, is that where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because if they say basically anything but inside the company, it might not be a good fit culturally. So those are some really fun tests you can use during the interview process. That's fantastic. It reminds me, there's the dancing part and the smiling and stuff. My son, I have 3 kids, and one of them went to Purdue University. Actually, I should back up. He started ballroom dancing in high school.
And
Wow.
when he started, he was a junior in high school, shy. He was 6'3", hunched over, shaggy hair, not too shaggy, but, shaggy hair. And we got an exchange student. And the exchange student was from Germany, and he had done ballroom dancing in Germany. And so he wanted to see what was it like in our community. So our son and our daughter, which were a year apart, went with the exchange student and to the studio. The exchange student didn't like it. Our kids loved it. And I saw this metamorphosis from my son and daughter, but particularly the son, because in ballroom, your shoulders have to be back. Your head is up, your chest is out, your frame is strong. And so when he danced then all the rest of high school, went on to Purdue, was on the ballroom competition team, was a president 1 year of that team. And when he graduated, he did graduate with a video production degree. He got a job as a ballroom dance instructor, professional ballroom dance instructor. And from May until December of that year, he made $9,000. And I said, Tyler, what in the world are you doing? What is, come on, you got a degree. What are you doing? He said, trust me, Mom. But that's social skill, because you have to, if you're going to teach somebody to dance like that, you've got to make instant rapport within seconds. And I saw this charming man come out, and it has really, so I would even add another thing. If they have ballroom dancing on their resume or whatever, you could ask them, have you ever ballroom danced? You can almost tell those who have even how they walk. So, Graves, I am looking at the clock, and we are out of time, but I cannot thank you enough. This was phenomenal. The information you gave was priceless to anybody who's looking. And so the bottom line with this whole thing is there is hope. If you say, oh no, I can't find any employees, well, guess what? You can't. If you say, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to find those employees, guess what? You will. And you have laid the groundwork, you have laid the map, and it's brilliant. If somebody wanted to get a sample of your ad that you put in or any of those other little details that you talked about, I'm going to have them get a hold of me. It's Nina, N-I-N-A, at MegaBucksMarketing.com. And if you could package that up, if you'd be so kind to do that, just a few of those things, I will be honored to send those on to them, because I have a feeling they'd love to see what that ad in Craigslist looked like, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've got that lying around.
Okay.
And we used it for all kinds of different positions. So absolutely, it'll work for everything.
I mean, I loved, telling the knock-knock joke. That was so smart. So, well, we're at the end. Again, thank you so much, Graves. Taking your time out of your busy day, and I appreciate you being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's such an honor. Thank you for allowing me to chat with you and your people. So much fun. I always have the best time with you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And as a reminder, if you want some of those things that Graves talked about, just email me back at Nina, N-I-N-A, at MegaBucksMarketing.com. Until next time, go out and find those employees.
Thank you for listening to MegaBucks Radio with Nina Hershberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit MegaBucksRadio.com.